Hey everyone, welcome back to Her Final Word. I'm Christy. You know, they say that greed turns blood into water, but when it comes to family heirlooms and secret wills, greed makes people completely blind. Today's story was sent to my inbox by an extraordinary 63-year-old woman named Evelyn. After her late husband passed, her stepdaughter and her smug fiancé tried to stage a ruthless psychological takeover, humiliating Evelyn in front of high society antique collectors, claiming she was a penniless fraud living on their charity. But the trap Evelyn set for them at a live, high-stakes auction? Oh, it is absolute perfection. Before we jump in, I have a quick question for you. Drop your city in the comments below and tell me, have you ever seen family members turn into vicious monsters the second money or an inheritance was brought to the table? Let's see where the most dramatic family battles are happening. Make sure you stay tuned until the very end. Right after Evelyn's story, I'm going to share 3 brutal psychological rules on how to protect your assets and dignity from manipulative family members, and how to make a greed-driven liar destroy themselves publicly. But first, let's look at what happened to Evelyn. I'm 63 years old. For 30 years, I worked as a master art restorer and historical appraiser. My late husband, Arthur, was a brilliant collector who shared my passion for rare 19th-century oil paintings. Together, we built a private collection worth millions, housed in our historic stone estate. I didn't care about flaunting our wealth. I cared about the history, the craft, and the quiet peace of our home. When Arthur passed away 2 years ago, he left the estate and the entire art collection directly to me in a clear, ironclad trust. But Arthur had a daughter from his first marriage, Victoria. Victoria was 34, obsessed with high society validation and perpetually living beyond her means. When she met her fiancé, Julian, a slick, fast-talking art broker with a mountain of hidden debt, the two of them set their eyes on my home like vultures circling a quiet valley. Victoria always resented me. She saw my quiet, modest lifestyle not as discipline, but as weakness. To her, a woman who restored old canvases in a denim apron wasn't a master of her craft. She was just an outdated obstacle standing between her and a fortune. The subtle disrespect began shortly after Arthur's memorial. Victoria and Julian started visiting the estate unannounced, walking through the gallery rooms with potential buyers on speed dial. When I reminded Victoria that the collection was private and belonged to my trust, she'd exchange a smirking glance with Julian and say, "Oh, Evelyn, don't be so dramatic. You're just custodian of these things for now. You wouldn't even know how to liquidate them if you needed to." They thought because I didn't drive sports cars or throw lavish parties, I was a naive old widow who could be easily pushed out of her own life. A smear campaign regarding an inheritance never starts with a lawsuit. It starts with social poisoning. Victoria and Julian knew they couldn't legally break my trust without a fight, so they decided to make me socially invisible and bankrupt my credibility first. Julian began spreading rumors among the region's elite collectors, gallery owners, and auction houses. Over private dinners, he'd whisper, "It's a tragic situation, really. Evelyn was just Arthur's assistant toward the end. She's convinced she owns the collection, but Arthur actually transferred the titles to Victoria before he died. Evelyn is holding onto the house out of pure spite, living on Victoria's charity. She's getting desperate." I started noticing the cold shoulder at gallery openings. Longtime acquaintances of my late husband would avoid eye contact. When I spoke to local curators about loaning pieces for museum exhibitions, I was met with vague excuses and awkward silences. Then came the breaking point. I arrived home one afternoon to find Victoria and Julian inside my private restoration studio. They were going through my leather-bound catalog ledgers. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, my voice cold and firm. Victoria didn't even flinch. She set a ledger down, crossed her arms, and looked at my work apron with disgust. "We're taking an inventory, Evelyn. Julian booked the main hall at the Grand Regency Hotel for an exclusive private auction next week. We're putting 5 of Dad's top impressionist pieces on the block." "Those paintings belong to my trust," I replied, standing tall. "You have zero legal right to sell them." Julian stepped forward, flashing a patronizing, razor-thin smile. "Evelyn, look at yourself. You're a 63-year-old widow hiding in a dusty house. Nobody in the art world believes you own these. As far as the high society buyers are concerned, Victoria is Arthur's sole heir, and you're just the caretaker who refuses to move out. If you try to stop the auction, we'll tell the press you're trying to steal a dead man's legacy. Good luck recovering your reputation from that. I didn't scream, and I didn't call the police to drag them out of my studio right then. I knew that if I got angry, it would play right into their narrative of the unstable, greedy stepmother. Instead, I let them walk out of my house carrying 3 carefully crated master paintings, including the crown jewel of the collection, a 19th-century landscape worth over $2 million. What Victoria and Julian didn't know, what nobody knew except my late husband and me, was the fundamental rule of high-end art restoration. 30 years ago, when Arthur and I bought that landscape, I created an exact, museum-grade physical reproduction of the piece to test historical varnish methods. The original master canvas had been safely stored in a climate-controlled museum vault downtown for over 5 years for security reasons. The painting hanging in my gallery, the one Victoria and Julian just stole, was the duplicate I had crafted decades ago, clearly marked with a microscopic chemical dye inside the frame lining that only an expert restorer would spot. Victoria and Julian were so blinded by greed, so eager to list the painting for auction to pay off Julian's gambling debts, that they didn't even bother to hire an independent master appraiser to verify the physical canvas. They just assumed that because it was hanging on my wall, it was the multi-million-dollar original. That night, I sat in my quiet study, sipping tea, and watched the online catalog for the Grand Regency auction go live. Victoria had listed the piece under her name as the exclusive inherited heir of the estate. They were planning to pocket millions from wealthy international buyers while framing me as a penniless imposter. I picked up my phone and made 2 calls, one to the chief curator of the National Art Registry and one to the State Financial Crimes Bureau. For the next 6 days, I let Victoria and Julian celebrate. I watched from afar as Victoria posted on social media about her upcoming philanthropic art gala, bragging about her late father's legacy while completely erasing my existence. Behind the scenes, I worked with surgical precision. I provided the state prosecutor and the Financial Crimes Bureau with the complete, certified trust documents, Arthur's original bill of sale, and the museum vault receipts proving where the real master painting actually was. The investigators were stunned. Victoria and Julian weren't just stealing private property. They were attempting to commit multi-million-dollar international wire fraud by selling a replica to high-profile buyers as an authenticated original. "We can arrest them at their house right now, Evelyn," the lead detective told me over the phone. "No," I replied smoothly. "If you arrest them at home, Julian's lawyers will spin it as a private family misunderstanding over inheritance paperwork. Let them host the auction. Let them accept the opening bids on stage. Let them commit the fraud in front of every collector, reporter, and gallery owner in the state." I wanted the humiliation to be absolute. I wanted every single person who had listened to their malicious rumors about me to watch the truth unfold under the bright lights of the Grand Regency Ballroom. The night of the auction arrived. The Grand Regency Ballroom was a sea of tuxedos, velvet gowns, champagne glasses, and high-stakes investors. Victoria was wearing a designer dress worth thousands, standing near the stage, sipping crystal champagne and holding court with the city's wealthy elite. Julian stood beside the auctioneer, looking like a man who thought he had just won the lottery. On the main display easel under a focused spotlight sat the landscape painting. "Ladies and gentlemen," the head auctioneer announced, his voice echoing through the microphone. "We open the bidding for this breathtaking 19th-century masterpiece, provided directly by Victoria, the sole inheritor of the estate. Bidding starts at $1 million. Bidding paddles immediately went up around the room. 1.2 million, 1.5 million, 1.8 million. Victoria beamed with pride, casting a triumphant look around the room. Right as the auctioneer raised his gavel and shouted, "Going once at $2.2 million to the gentleman in the front." The heavy rear doors of the ballroom swung open. I walked down the center aisle. I wore a tailored cream cashmere sweater, my silver gray hair styled perfectly, and an expression of unshakable calm. Beside me walked the chief appraiser of the National Art Registry and 3 plainclothes officers from the Financial Crimes Bureau. The chatter in the ballroom died instantly. Guests turned, whispering frantically as they recognized me. Victoria's face turned bright red with rage. She stepped toward the edge of the stage, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Security, get this woman out of here. She's my late father's former assistant. She's mentally unstable and trying to disrupt my legal auction." I didn't stop. I walked straight up the stage steps, looking directly at the auctioneer, then turned to face the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice effortlessly filling the hall. "My stepdaughter just informed you that I am an unstable assistant selling fake claims. But if the chief appraiser here steps up to inspect the left inner lining of that frame under ultraviolet light, you will find my personal restoration stamp from 30 years ago." The chief appraiser stepped forward, pulled out an ultraviolet lamp, and shone it on the frame. He looked up, his face pale. "It's a replica," he announced into his own mic. "A museum-grade reproduction." The entire ballroom erupted into chaotic gasps. "The original master painting," I continued calmly into the microphone, "is currently locked in the National Museum vault under my private trust name. Victoria and Julian did not inherit this collection. They stole this replica from my private studio, lied to this auction house, and attempted to sell you a fake for $2 million. Julian tried to bolt toward the backstage exit, but 2 detectives intercepted him at the door, forcing him to his knees and snapping steel handcuffs around his wrists right in front of the art world's top investors. Victoria began screaming hysterically, her designer dress rumpled as she grabbed the auctioneer's podium. "This is a setup. She hid the original. She's trying to ruin me." "You ruined yourself the moment you mistook my quiet life for weakness, Victoria," I said, looking her dead in the eye as an officer stepped up to escort her off the stage. "You wanted my home, my art, and my dignity. Now you have a felony record for wire fraud and grand larceny." The cameras from the regional press flashes relentlessly as Victoria and Julian were marched down the center aisle in handcuffs, their high society status permanently obliterated in a matter of minutes. The wealthy collectors who had previously shunned me began stepping forward, stuttering apologies and offering nervous condolences. I politely held up my hand, stopping them in their tracks. "Save your apologies," I said softly. "A genuine painting never loses its value just because a liar calls it fake, and a real woman never loses her strength just because greedy people whisper behind her back." I turned, picked up my coat, and walked out of the Grand Regency ballroom into the cool night air. My estate was quiet when I returned. The gallery rooms were peaceful once more. Victoria and Julian were facing up to 10 years in federal prison, and their mountain of debt was now public knowledge. They tried to steal my late husband's legacy, but they forgot one fundamental truth. You can fake a painting, but you can never fake authority. What an absolute masterpiece of cold, calculated revenge. Victoria and Julian thought they were playing a game against a defenseless, quiet widow, but Evelyn let them walk straight into a multi-million-dollar legal wall. She didn't waste her energy yelling at them in her living room. She allowed their greed to drive them onto the biggest stage possible, where their fall would be permanent and undeniable. If you ever find yourself dealing with greedy family members or toxic people trying to undermine your rights and reputation, here are 3 essential psychological strategies from her final word. 1. The trap of apparent compliance. When an arrogant, greedy person tries to push you out, don't give them an immediate emotional reaction. Give them a false sense of security. Let them think they've won, let them make their plans public, and let them leave a massive, undeniable trail of evidence before you strike. 2. Never protect a relative from public truth. Many people suffer in silence because they're family. Manipulative relatives rely on your silence and your desire to avoid family scandal. Break the illusion. When family members commit criminal or toxic acts against you, treat them with the exact same legal and public accountability you would give a stranger. 3. Secure the foundation in silence. Evelyn didn't brag about having the original painting in a vault. She kept her leverage quiet until the exact moment it mattered most. Always keep your strongest legal, financial, and personal receipts hidden until you are ready to deliver a single, decisive strike. Now, I want to hand the microphone over to you. Evelyn showed zero mercy to her stepdaughter Victoria, allowing her to be arrested in handcuffs in front of the entire elite community and facing years in federal prison. Some people might say that sending your late husband's daughter to prison was too harsh, and that she should have stopped the auction before the police got involved. Others say Victoria got the exact justice she deserved for trying to ruin Evelyn. What do you think? Did Evelyn go too far, or was this the ultimate payback for a greedy stepdaughter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to her final word. Remember, the final word should always belong to you. See you next time.